Hello everybody and welcome to another furniture tutorial from me, Jodie, from Decoris Vintage Designs. And in today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to get this very colourful hand-painted bohemian look, and I hope you enjoy it. And I want to do something a little bit more coral, a little bit softer than my usual palette. So what I have planned for this is, as I say, I've got Dixie Belle Boss on here, which is a primer for stopping bleed through. And now I'm just going to paint a base colour on here. I've got a few colours down here, and what I'm going to start with is I'm going to put a little bit of cotton on there. I want this to be very soft and pastel-y, so I'm literally just going to put some of this in the middle here. And I kind of want it so so there's a bit of a sunshine in the middle there, and then it gets darker around the edges. And there's more shadows, if that makes sense. Okay, so what I am putting over the top is Rebel Yellow, which is a very soft pastel-y colour by Dixie Belle. So I am applying this over the cotton and also around the cotton, and I'm kind of using up and down, left and right movements. So what you need to think is, when you see a sunset, you get this very soft glow as the sun is setting, usually in the middle of the sky. And that's kind of what the cotton is going to do here. The sky is never one colour, obviously. It's usually a lot of different colours, a lot of soft colours. And this is kind of what I'm going for here now by using the cotton and the Rebel Yellow. Using feathered movements in the hope to kind of reflect the sun's rays. Up next we have Flamingo, which is a lovely coral colour, and this is going to form our main colour on this piece today. I'm working that around my Rebel Yellow and then softly blending it in. And again, I'm kind of using feathered movements, and I'm very gently using my brush as I do this. Not putting a lot of paint on my brush at all. And by the way guys, the brush that I'm using here is a Dixie Belle Mini if you're interested. By limiting the amount of paint that I have on my brush, it means that I can blend much more easily. So if you put too much paint on your brush, what that means is you will just get like lots and lots of big clogs of colour, and it will make it really difficult to blend, and one colour will probably overpower another. So by limiting and being very gentle with the amount of colour I apply, what that means is then I can go in, so like here for example, now I'm putting some cotton over the top to highlight again in the middle where the sun is. So by putting on just a little bit of colour at a time, and also using my water mister to make sure that the piece is kind of wet but not, well, a little bit damp but not saturated, what this means is then you can then gradually build up the colour much easier. Here I have roughly put where the sun's rays are going to be. I know it kind of looks a little bit like a kid's drawing it right now, but don't worry, I'm going to blend them out at the moment. And what that means is I will just have a very soft yellow peeking through. So yeah, so next up is a mixture of peony and cotton. It's just about around a 50-50 mixture to make it nice and soft. So again, if you go back, if you look at a sunset or look at any photos of sunsets, you'll see that there are lots of different variations and nice warm tones of colour. So I'm just bringing another variation into this now. The soft peony and cotton mix, you know, complement the coral and yellow really well. And now I've got some Lucky Lavender, which is a very pretty colour. So I'm applying this on the top and blending it into the Flamingo and the peony mix. And again, I am not overloading my brush. I'm using soft strokes, and also I'm using a little bit of water to keep it moving. So they are my top tips for today when it comes to blending. Next up is Farmhouse Green, which is a very lovely green by Dixie Belle. It has a bit of yellow in it. All I'm really doing here is blocking out where I'm going to put my blossoms and leaves and foliage and things. So I'm not overly concerned with blending at this point. I kind of just want to block out where my next colours are going to go, and also it will provide a little bit of a base and highlight and things for when I do paint the foliage over the top. Okay, it's time to get the painting started now, you know, the foliage with the blossoms and things. What I'm starting here with is, I believe it was Gravel Road that I used. You could also use some chocolate or, you know, any kind of brown that you want. And I'm just going to, I'm just painting a tree. Now, I am not the best at painting trees. For whatever reason, I really struggle with them. So what I'm going to do is, because the tree is going to be reasonably in the background, I want it to look like it's going to be behind all the blossoms and foliage. I'm painting this first, so then I can come in and paint the foliage over the top, and that will just provide a little bit of perspective. So I'm just mapping that out here, very sort of straightforward and simple. When you're painting the branches as well, make sure they are thicker near the trunk and a little bit thinner, you know, the longer the branches. I've now grabbed my mop brush and my palmetto, and I've just dampened my mop brush a little bit, and I've dipped this into the palmetto, and I'm just going to use tapping movement. This is a really super easy hack to make it look like you've got foliage, and very quick to do without having to paint every individual leaf. There is not going to be anything super technical in this tutorial today. It's going to be more about creating texture and, you know, different kind of flowers and things, just by doing different techniques like tapping and swiping and things like that. And I really think anybody would be able to do this. So what I'm doing is I am basically tapping all down the bottom where I want the foliage to be, and then kind of creating almost a vignette with my foliage by going up the sides and having a thick curve going up the sides as well, and then it's getting a little thinner at the top there. I'm just mapping it out at the moment. You can see it's kind of going in front of the tree now, so the tree is becoming behind. And yeah, so I am just mapping it out right now, and I will be coming in with some of the colours to add depth, like here for example. So now I've got evergreen, and we're going to create some depth with evergreen. By creating depth, we're going to make this look a little bit more realistic. So basically, for the moment, just pat the evergreen into the palmetto. The palmetto shouldn't be totally wet, but it doesn't need to be totally dry either in order to do this. And so you just want a kind of combination of the palmetto and evergreen, just to give the foliage a more realistic look, because in nature nothing is one colour, and there's usually a lot of different colours, you know. So if you look at even just a single leaf, there will be lots of variations of green on that leaf. So that's what we're trying to recreate here. I'm now coming back in with a little bit of the Farmhouse Green, and I'm focusing that on the centre down at the bottom there, and the reason being is because that's where I'm thinking the sun is. So the sun is going to be poking through there, so that is why I'm highlighting that area. And also I'm just highlighting a little bit around the edges as well, because if you think of the sun's rays again, the sun's rays might be poking through the foliage there as well. I just want to point out that I am using the same mop brush for all of this. However, once it gets overloaded, you might want to think about, you know, having a few on hand so that you can replace it. I have now got a little fan brush, and I'm going in here with my evergreen and palmetto again, and I'm just kind of creating just random movements, just random brush strokes. Again, because nothing is symmetrical or perfect in nature, you have different colours and textures and, you know, different angles and things and shapes. So that's all I'm doing here. You don't really need to think too much about it at all. You just need to get in there with your brush and just do some random brush strokes, and this, I guarantee you, that will create something interesting on your abstract piece of art. Next up is Chocolate, which is a warm brown, and I'm just going to add a little bit of depth to this tree, and I'm just going to shape it out and bring it down a little bit more. I feel like it's looking a little bit lost and small in that corner there, and I feel like the branches definitely need to, you know, come towards the middle of the piece to just give it a little bit more of an impact. Now I'm coming in with some cotton and Rebel Yellow, and I've just got a very little fine art brush, and I'm just tapping. I told you this was all about just doing different techniques with the paintbrushes to create different textures and looks, and this is another one. So yeah, so we're going to try and create some blossoms here. I wasn't quite sure where I was going with the tree at this point, but I knew it needed to have a little bit more impact than what it was having, so I covered up the branches with the blossoms, making sure that the blossoms are thicker towards the start of the branch again and thinner towards the end. And I have no idea what tree this is. I don't even know if this tree exists. I didn't look at any pictures or anything. I was just kind of painting it as I felt like at the time. I'm coming back in with my original mop brush and spritzing it to reactivate the paint. I haven't put any extra paint on there. I'm just kind of using the paint that I already have, and then I just started to give it a little bit of a tap just to create some leaves. You can see that I've already painted some blossoms here, but not to worry, my camera just got full and then didn't save the video, but not to worry, I'm going to be showing you lots more. Here I have Rebel Yellow and a brush with a bit of a round tip to it. You know, you can just have a play around with brushes. Different brushes will give you different textures and brush strokes. And I am just tapping it in places. I'm kind of giving it this curve to make it look like the blossoms are stretching and bending over to the middle there. And then I've got a fan brush with some, I think it's probably evergreen or something like that on there. And I'm also just creating some foliage that's growing up towards the sky, and then again some foliage coming out around the sides. Now I have my mop brush and some aubergine, and aubergine is a very dark purple, an aubergine colour by Dixie Belle, and I'm creating some shadows. And I have the same mop brush again for this technique that I've been using all the way through, and I'm creating shadows where the sun is less likely to be, and that is in the corners. So I have yet another colour, Lucky Lavender, and I am just tapping this on there. And, you know, again, what I want it to look like is that there are random, you know, blooms and things in the foliage, and just lots of different flowers and things going on and things like that. So again, here I have some peacock, and I'm using the fan brush to create yet a different look and a different texture to this piece. So I'm literally just grabbing different brushes, different colours, and basically tapping and swiping again in different ways, and again making sure that I want the blooms to look curved on either side, and I want them to look like they're reaching out towards the sun, and I want the blooms on the bottom there to also look like they're growing towards the sun as well. In order to make the look appear soft and not blockish full of colour, you really do have to come in with different colours and different shades just to make it look like there are flowers growing on top of flowers, and that, you know, as I say, there are different variations and things like that, so that it has a bit more of a realistic feel. So what I am doing is every time I draw a bloom towards the side there, I'm coming in again with a mop brush, and I'm just blending it in a little bit by tapping the original colour on the mop brush to make it look like there's some foliage growing around those blooms as well. I won't go into every single bloom and colour and technique that I'm using here, because I think you can kind of get the idea of what I am doing. I will list all the colours below though, and I just want to say, guys, if you are enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe and click that bell to turn on the notifications so that you don't ever miss a tutorial. One very easy thing to keep in mind when you're doing this kind of look, so you have maybe your main colour, like perhaps yellow, and then you might want a highlighter colour, so maybe that's white, and then a shadow on the other side where the sun won't be hitting it, and maybe something like aubergine, and that's how you create depth. So I've got another technique going on here, and I've got a medium fan brush. It looks like I've got some Lucky Lavender, and I think it was Pure Ocean that I used here. And I'm just using swiping movements and sort of curvy wriggly movements, I'm going to call them, for this part here. And I am putting some in the foliage to make it look like flowers are growing through all of that. And then I'm also tapping and swiggling the brush up and doing different sort of movements and things with it as it goes upwards as well. So you can see here that I've got some red in the mix now, and this is Farmhouse Red, and I am again doing swiping movements, little tapping movements, and I'm bringing a bit of yellow into it and layering a bit of red on the lavender there on the side, and you can just have so much fun with this, because there are you can just literally use whatever colours you want, because there is literally every colour of plant out there, And if you struggle a little bit and you're not entirely sure what colours to put with what, just go on Pinterest or something like that, find a photo that you can sort of replicate a little bit, like a nature photo, and then just pick the colours out of there and the different shapes and things and just try to recreate them. That's how I started out. I've painted this look before, so I didn't really need to for this. But I was just literally grabbing whatever colour I wanted and throwing it on there, tapping, wriggling, just whatever sort of takes your fancy. So as the colours dry, I am layering other colours on top of it, and again this is to create depth and perspective. So I guess one very simplified view of it is there may be flowers behind flowers and things like that. So so I might have a lavender flower, and then I might have a red flower, a poppy or something growing over the top of it. I may have holly bushes and berry bushes. So I'm also grabbing my mop brush and using it with different colours on it and creating sort of what might be berry bushes and things like that. So you can create depth by doing this. Just as I said before as well, don't overload your brush with colour. I'm actually using quite a bit of water for this. I'm not using so much that it's saturated and dripping, but I am almost wanting this to have a pastel-y watercolour look to it. So so I am using a fair amount of water, and as I'm blending this, I don't want any of the blossoms to look very thick and blockish. I want them all to kind of look in synergy with one another. So you can start to see how the left side of this piece now is starting to look very full, and how it's coming together, and how we are starting to see a very sort of almost like tropical, overgrown, wild garden type feel to it. And we can see the highlight there in the middle from the blending that I did earlier, where the sun, is sort of shining through a little bit. And so this is just by layering colours and using different techniques. So here is a perfect example of how I'm going to layer some colours here for dimension. I have some palmetto. I'm mixing up palmetto and evergreen and just creating something with a soft curve to it, because nothing in nature is usually totally straight. I am then coming in with some peony and applying that over the top using the same technique. And then I'm also getting some cotton as a highlighter, and then you can see here how this has created depth, and the cotton was used on the side to where the sun might be hitting it. I'm still not happy with this tree. I still feel like it's looking a little lost there. So I'm sorry I'm kind of blocking the way a little bit there. I didn't realise I was in front of the camera. But I'm just adding a few more branches to this so that the tree looks fuller, more realistic, and fills the space a little bit better as well, so that it doesn't look so lost. I'm going to come in with the exact same techniques as before. So, I've blocked out where I want the branches, and then I'm tapping in some blossoms and filling out some of my existing blossoms and foliage and things too. And I think this is starting to look much, much better. I'm also having the tree dangle down past the top door and onto the drawers, and I think this just gives it a nice little effect by doing that. One thing I have issues with when doing trees for some reason, I kind of end up making them look a little bit too rigid sometimes. So just make sure that you kind of just keep your the shape of your tree very soft. You don't want any sharp lines, and as I say, make sure that the bottom, so the bottom of the branch is much danglier and thinner and looser than the rest of the the tree, because obviously the branches at the stem are going to be much heftier and thicker, and then they become much lighter as it goes along. So I'm also bringing in a little bit of kernel mustard into this now as well. And again, it's just to provide that sort of different variation and depth and highlight. because, you know, you might have some leaves that are kind of, you do have leaves that go yellow for some reason. I'm not a massive plant expert, I'm not entirely sure why. And then the rest of the green, you know, leaves are usually very bright and green. So just have a think about nature, get outside and look at nature, and look at photos and things, and you will start to see all these different colours and shapes, and you know, and that can really help you when you're painting art as well. It's not something I've done yet, but you can also just go out with some oil pencils or pastels or something and an art book when it's nice and sunny, and you know, just find a tree or a flower that you like and just sit and draw it and practice those shapes. So I've started working on the other side now. The important thing to know about when you do this kind of look is don't aim for symmetry. So I am not going to be matching this side up at all to the other side. I am just going to kind of be working on it just like I did the other side, and basically choosing the colours that I feel like at that point, and you know, different textures and brushes and things like that. Another tip is when doing this kind of look, if you do want to kind of have a more realistic, natural painting, is to have blossoms that are falling as well. So I'm also adding some blossoms in there that aren't necessarily part of the, you know, stem or flower or whatever. You know, blossoms do fall off in nature, so have some random, you know, little dots, you know, scattered around as well. You know, there might be the little white fairy things flying around, or you might have a little bit of a petal that's fallen off and that's floating to the ground. Just think about these things as well when you're doing your painting, and this will also help you create a more realistic piece. To seal this piece, I am using Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in Clear with a large wax brush. I am not going to use all of the decorative waxes that I normally use for this because I really don't feel like it needs it, obviously because the art itself is a decoration. So when you apply clear wax, I like to just cover the whole piece. I like to get a good base and I like to really work it into the grain. And then once I feel the piece is covered, I will wait 15 minutes for the wax to dry, and then I will remove any excess. It's important that you remove the excess wax, otherwise it will just sit on top of there forever. It won't sink in, it will only soak in to a certain extent. So yeah, so make sure that you take off any excess after 15 minutes. And then if you want, you can then also buff to a sheen. So get a lint-free rag and just buff away, and the wax will start to shine as well. And so not only does the wax provide a level of sheen that you can get to your kind of desired look, it also will harden and provide protection as well. The Dixie Belle wax and products that I've used are all listed below, and you can buy them through my links as well if you're in America or Canada. I do really appreciate it if you use these links. It really does help me create more content. I will also find your Dixie Belle retailer below as well if you live anywhere else in the world, so that you can find somebody close to you, a stockist close to you that also stocks Dixie Belle. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching today. I do appreciate all of your support, and as always, if you have any comments or feedback, or if there's anything that you would like to see, then please drop them below. I'd love to hear them. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe. Thank you so much.